Life is hopeless for a lot of people, and Bitcoin is hope, right? Because it gives everyone an engineered monetary asset that's a bearer instrument. If you gave me $1 billion in 20 years, I couldn't find a way to trade with another company or a counterparty in Nigeria.
Mm-hmm.
Like no amount of money. You give me $10 billion. I couldn't do it because you get shut down at the banking level. You can't link up a bank in Nigeria with a bank in the US. You get shut down at this credit card level because they don't have the credit card, so they won't clear. You get shut down at the compliance FCPA level because you wouldn't be able to implement a system that interfaced with somebody else's system if it's not in the right political jurisdiction. On the other hand, 3 entrepreneurs in Nigeria on the weekend could create a website that would trade in this lightning economy using open protocols without asking anybody's permission. So you're talking about something that's like 1 million times cheaper, less friction, and faster to do it if you want to get money to move. Bitcoin's a universal trust protocol, right? A universal energy protocol, if you will. English is one. Okay. What I see is a bunch of fragmentation of applications. For example, the Russian payment app is not going to work in Ukraine.
Right. The
Ukraine payment app is not going to work in Russia. The U.S. payment apps won't work either of those places, as far as I know. So, and in Argentina, their payment app may not work in certain parts of Africa. So what you have is different local economies where people spin up their own applications compliant with their own local laws, or in war zones not compliant, but just spinning up. I think that we're probably going to be 36 months of software development at the point that every Android phone and every iPhone has a Bitcoin wallet or a crypto wallet in it of sorts. That's a big deal. If Apple embraced Lightning, that's a big deal. Look at most people everywhere in the world. They don't have property rights. They don't have effective bank, and their currency is broken. Like, what are the 2 things that in theory would serve as the equivalent of an organic battery or an economic battery to civilization? It would be, I have a currency which holds its value and I can store it in a bank. So a risk-free currency derivative. I pay you your money, you take your life savings, you put it in the bank, you save up for your retirement, you'll live happily ever after. That's the American dream, right? That's the idyllic situation. The real situation is there are no banks, you can't get a bank account. So I give you your pay in currency, and then I double the supply and I give it to my cousin, or I give it to whatever cause I want, or I use it to buy weapons. And then you find that a loaf of bread costs triple next month is what it cost, and your life savings is worthless. And so in that environment, everybody's ripped back to Stone Age barter. Mm-hmm. And the problem with that, even Stone Age barter, is you're going to carry your life savings on your back. And what happens when the guy with a machine gun points it at your head and just takes your life savings? So life is hopeless for a lot of people, and Bitcoin is hope, right? Because it gives everyone an engineered monetary asset that's a bearer instrument, and it gives them a bank on their mobile phone, and they don't have to trust their government or another counterparty with their life force. Robot own money or property. How about, can a Tesla car? Can I actually put enough money in a car for it to drive itself and maintain itself forever? Or can I create an artificially intelligent creature in cyberspace that is endowed such that it would live 1,000 years and continue to do its job, right? We have a word for that in the real world. It's institution. Harvard, Cambridge, Stanford, right? There are institutions with endowments that go on in perpetuity. But what if I wanted to perpetuate a software program? And with something like digital property, with Bitcoin and Lightning, you could do it. And on the other hand, with banks and credit cards, you couldn't. There is at least one digital property, and that is Bitcoin. If you can create a truly decentralized, non-custodial, bearer instrument that is not under the control of any organization, that is fairly distributed, then you might create another or multiple, and there may be others out there. But I think that the frustration of a lot of people in the Bitcoin community, and I share this with Jack, is we could create $100 trillion of value in the real world simply by building applications on top of Bitcoin as a foundation. And so continually trying to reinvent the wheel and create competitive things is a massive waste of time, and it's diversion of human creativity. It's like we have an ethical good thing, and now we're going to try to create a third or a fourth one. Why? I think the real fundamental issue is you just never want it to change. Like if you really want something decentralized, you want a genetic template that substantially is not going to change for 1,000 years. So I think Satoshi said it at one point. He said the nature of the software is such that by version 0.1, its genetic code was set. If there was any development team that's continually changing it, on a routine basis, it becomes harder and harder to maintain its decentralization, because now there's the issue of who's influencing the changes.
Yeah.
So what you really want is a very, very simple idea, right? The simplest idea. I'm just going to keep track of who owns 21 million parts of energy. And when someone proposes big functional upgrades, you don't really want that development to go on the base layer. You want that development to go on the layer 3s, because now Cash App has a proprietary set of functionality and it's a security. And if you're going to promote the use of this thing, you're not going to promote the layer 3 security, because that's an edge to a given entity and you're trusting the counterparty. You're going to promote the layer 1, or at most the layer 2. I think having a founder that was anonymous or pseudonymous is important. I think the founder disappearing is also important. I think that the fact that the Satoshi coins never moved is also important. I think the lack of an initial coin offering is also important. I think the lack of a corporate sponsor is important. I think the fact that it traded for 15 months with no commercial value was also important. I think that the simplicity of the protocol is very important. And I think that the outcome of the block size wars is very important. And all of those things add up to common property. They're all indicators of a digital property as opposed to security. If there was a Satoshi sitting on top of $50 billion worth of Bitcoin, I don't think it would cripple Bitcoin as property, but I think it would undermine its digital property. And if I wanted to undermine a crypto asset network, I would do the opposite of all those things. I would launch one myself. I would sell 25% or 50% to the general public. I would keep some of the I would pre-mine some stuff or early mine it, and I would keep an influence on it. Those are all the opposite of what you would do in order to create common property. And so I see the entire story as Satoshi giving a gift of digital property to the human race. What we've got is really a beautiful thing. We've got a chain reaction in cyberspace, or an ideology spreading virally in the world that has seasoned in a fair, ethical fashion. Sometimes it's a very violent, brutal fashion with all the volatility, right? And there's been a lot of sound and fury along the way. The risk has never been lower. If you look at all the risks, right? The risks in the early years is the engineering protocol proper? Like 1 megabyte block size, 10-minute clock frequency, cryptography is first, will it be hacked or will it crash? 730,000 blocks and it hasn't crashed. Will it be hacked? Hasn't been hacked. But it's a Lindy thing, right? You wait 13 years to see if it'll be hacked. But on the other hand, with $1 billion, it's not as interesting a target as it is with 100 billion. And when it gets to be worth $1 trillion, then it's a bigger target. So the risk has been bleeding off over time as the network monetized. I think the second question is, will it be banned? You couldn't know. It literally could have been banned at any time, many times early on. So it could have been in any number of places banned by a government, but in fact it was legitimized as property. And then the question is, would it be hacked or would it be copied? Will it be something better than that? And it was copied 15,000 times. And you know the story of all those. And they either diverged to be something totally different and not comparable, or someone trying to copy a non-sovereign bearer instrument store of value found that their networks crashed to be 1% of what Bitcoin is. So now we're sitting at a point where all those risks are out of the way. I would say that year one of institutional adoption is it started August 2020. That's when Microstrategy bought $250 million worth of Bitcoin, and we put that out on the wire. We were the first publicly traded company to actually buy Bitcoin. I don't think you could have found a $5 million purchase from a public company before we did that. So that was kind of like a gun going off. And then in the next 12 months, Tesla bought Bitcoin, Square bought Bitcoin. And I'd say now we're in year two of institutional adoption. And there are about 24, should be 24 publicly traded Bitcoin miners by the end of this quarter. So you're looking at 36 publicly traded companies, and you've got 50, at least in the range of $50 billion on the balance of Bitcoin on the balance sheet of publicly traded companies, and hundreds of billions of dollars of market cap of Bitcoin exposed companies. Decade one was entrepreneurial, experimental. Decade two is a rotation from entrepreneurs to institutions, and is becoming institutionalized. So maybe decade one, you go from 0 to $1 trillion, and in decade two, you go from 1 trillion to 100 trillion.